Hi guys, welcome to the first episode in our Flask series. For the next couple of weeks, we'll be building a minimum viable product from scratch. We'll have the front end, the back end, and we're also going to be deploying the app. Basically, we'll be building a Flask application, basically an ALX learners website where learners can actually give their feedback on the ALX experience, what it is like. Basically, we're going to be having a sign up page, a login page, and home page, an ALX stories page where learners can actually give their feedback. And we're also going to be having an ALX stories page where we can actually see all the learners who have contributed their stories. We're going to see it on one page. And we're also going to be having a profile page for each user. So this is what we're going to be building for the next couple of weeks. So the first question is, what exactly is a Flask application, or what is a Flask framework? Basically, there are different Python frameworks. We have Flask, we have Django. Those are the more popular ones. Flask is lightweight compared to Django. Django is more robust. Flask basically helps us, the Flask framework basically helps us build web applications really fast since it's lightweight, and it's good for an introduction to using frameworks in Python. So the first thing I would want to show us in a Flask setup is exactly what do we need to install to get our Flask application started. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create an external folder because I'll be using VS Code for the duration of this tutorial. So I have created a folder in my local computer. The folder name is Alx blog. I'm going to be importing that into my VS Code. So I'm searching for where it is. It's in pictures. So I've selected it and I'm bringing it into my VS Code right now. You can see my Alx blog file, and I'm going to be exiting the welcome environment. So the first thing I want to do is, after bringing my full folder in, this folder will house all of the files within my website and my main file. So basically, I'm going to be bringing up my terminal because I need to run some command line functions. So the first command line function I would run is pip. Pip is a conventional Python code that we can use to install dependencies for our different applications. So I'll do pip install, and the first package I would like to install is Flask. Flask contains all of the classes that we're going to be using in our Flask application. So basically I'll do pip install Flask. I already have this installed on my VS Code, so it will most likely show us that the requirement is already met. But if you don't have this installed, you would need to do pip install Flask, and you need to run it. So this is going to be showing me that the requirement is already met because I already have it on my system. So the next thing I would want to do is pip install Flask login. Now Flask login would help me handle the login system on my website, which includes login, logout, current user. We'll see this as we move on in the course of this tutorial what Flask login is and how we really use it. And the next thing or the last thing we want to install for now is something called Flask SQL Alchemy. Now I'll do pip install Flask SQL Alchemy. Now Flask SQL Alchemy is simply used to manage the models for our database. So the reason why it's saying requirement already satisfied, it's because I've already done this before. I already have it set up in my environment. So we have that, and that's all good. So if you have conducted this step, you're ready to move on to creating your file structure. So now I'll come right here, and the first file I would want to create is a file called main.py. Main.py. Now it is from this main.py that I will be running my Flask server. Now, some developers or programmers or engineers would name this server.py or run.py. It's all fine. Main.py is not a static name for this file. You can basically name it whatever you want it to be, but main.py is a good convention for what this is named. Yeah, so I'll be sticking with main.py. A disclaimer. So I know that you cannot name this Flask. You'll actually come up with some issues. Small letter F, Flask. You come up with some issues if you name this Flask that, right? Okay. And since I've created my main.py in the body of my ALX block, so now I really want to create a file that will contain website content. So I'll create a folder, and this folder I will name it website. You should learn to name your files and folders in such a way that it's easy to identify what they do and how they relate to the whole file setup on your website. Yeah, so that it is intuitive to actually use. So I'll enter, and now, as I've done that, next thing I want to create inside this website file is a file called, or a folder called static. Just static, like the word static. So basically this will contain files that generally do not change. There are basically three files inside our, or three kind of files that you would find in a static file. Number one is our JavaScript file. Number two is our CSS file. And number three are images. Our JavaScript file will actually help to create some functionality or add some functionality to our HTML. Our CSS helps to add styling to our HTML. HTML most times is raw UI code, but CSS will add some styling, colors, positioning, alignment to our raw HTML code, while JavaScript will help create some functionality or add some functionality to our HTML. To create something called templates. The template files will contain all of our HTML. Now, here the static file contains our JavaScript files, our CSS, both of which will actually act on our HTML. Now, all of our HTML files will be inside our template files. This is our about page, our sign up page, our login page, our base.html, which will be the base template for our files. The base template will contain the main structure of our website that is transferable, that is constant throughout the major pages of our website. So all the pages of our website in HTML form will be inside our template folder. And the next thing I want to create is the views.py file. So create a views.py file. So our views.py file would actually control giving a response to requests from our clients. So it would render a response in form of an HTML to the response, or a resource to the response from our clients. And our clients are simply the users of our applications. So when we request for maybe our home page, it is the view spy that will actually serve the home page. And moving on, we'll have another module or file, basically, that's called all.py. All.py would actually contain the routes for our authentication files, or for our authentication, basically our login, our logout, our sign up, basically. And we'd also have something called a file called models.py. Models.py will contain all of the models for our database. And lastly, we would have a file inside there that's called init. Init is two underscores init 2 underscores.py. So init.py will actually performs the major function of making this entire structure, this superstructure called website, and the children folders under it. It makes them all one package, such that anything registered within init.py can be called from website directly, without you necessarily needing to say, okay, from init.py import. You can just do from website import, because this init.py makes all of this a package. All right. So now when we see, when I minimize the website directory, you can see that we have two basic directories, which is the website and the main.py. So this is a basic file structure within a Flask setup. This is good. So now we'll start writing our code, and I'll get into my init.py file, and I'll say from Flask import Flask. And basically this is it. From the Flask installation we have done, from the Flask module, we are importing the class called Flask, and then we are creating a function that would create this Flask app. So it is a function, so it's going to start with def create app. This is basically how to write a function in Python. And basically we also have the Flask Flask. So this is the Flask class, and then we want the application to know where to get this Flask from. So this name, this is a special variable that actually references the name of the module we are in. So it actually points to the module that our Flask is stored inside for easy accessibility. So we'll now initialize this to a variable called app. So this creates an instance of our Flask application or our Flask class. Yeah. So right now that we have a Flask initialized to this app, all of our Flask class is now available to us via this variable called app. And the first thing I want to do is I want to create a configuration setting for this app. This configuration setting will secure our session data and cookies. So I'll do app.config. Then this configuration will be for the secret key. App.configuration. Configuration is for our secret key. Now we can make the creation of this secret key dynamic for better security, but for this instance we would actually create it by ourselves manually. This will be Alx blog 2024, right? So the last thing I will do right now is I will now create a return statement, and what I'll be returning back is the app instance that I have formally created. So now there's the app contains the Flask class, and the app also has a configuration setting when I return it here. Good. And so to start our Flask app, so I told you that we would want to create a file. So we want to create a file that basically does one thing, and this file basically runs our Flask app. So there's a file that has a sole purpose of running our Flask app. That is its basic and only function actually. So this helps in modularity. So you can see that I've created my Flask app here. I've returned it here. And so for me to bring the whole of this setup here, now I told you that this init.py file makes this whole structure a package. So how do I bring this create app function from here into our main.py? Because that is where I want to run it now. So I would basically need to call this function from within this app, but I told you that init.py makes this all a package, so I don't need to call it from this init.py file. I can basically call it from the website, because now the website is a package that includes the init.py file, and we have some configurations within here that can be called from this website package. So basically I'll go to my main.py. Now if you look at our file structure, the main.py is outside of the website, it's not inside it. So I can call the website from the main.py file. So I'll say from website, sorry about that, from website import So what are we importing? We're importing this function called create app. So we come back to our main.py and we'll import our create app. So our create app here is not used. That's why we have this this underline. That's a Pyland's thing actually. It just simply shows us that we've been able to import it, but we've not been able to use it yet. So we'll also create an instance of this function here. So we're gonna initialize our create app into the variable called app. So this basically takes on the create app function. So it takes on all the properties of the create app function that we are bringing from our init.py, basically, which has made our website a package. So we are calling that create app function that we initially created there here, and we are now putting all of that create app function inside this variable called app. So from this app now we can access the create app function. So now I can do my app dot run. So now this would run my app if I run it now. But now we do not want a case where our app runs when we do not run this main.py file. So I told you guys that I only want this main.py file to run when I intentionally run the main.py file. So it's also possible the way we imported this create app from website. It's also possible that somebody imports this main.py into another file and they are able to run it. So I really do not want that to happen. I only want this to run, not when it's the main.py file is imported. You know the main.py file contains this app.run. So if this is imported into another module or file, this will also run. So we really want it to only run when this main.py file is run the Python way in our terminal. So I would, to get against it running when it's imported and not only when it's being the main.py file is being run. So we create a conditional and we say if name, and like I already told us, the name is a special variable that actually points to the name of the module that we are in. So say if name is equals to main. So basically that means if name is equals to if name is equals to the main file that we are in, then the app would actually run. But this would not run when this particular file is imported into another module. It will only run when we directly run this main.py file. That's basically what that statement means. I hope you understand it. Alright. So we need to create a strict equality symbol out here. Alright. So app.run. So at this instance our app would run. But now let's say we are building our website. Once we run it, we do not want to keep running it every time we make a change. Every time we make a change, we run it. Every time we make a change, we run it. So we want to be able to run it once, and then every change that we make is automatically updated when we save it. So So basically, this is why we use this instruction called debug is equals to true. So we are saying debug it actually. So this debug is equals to true will just basically ensure that once our app is run for the first time, unless we exit from the running panel, it will keep updating our code when we save. We don't need to keep running it over and over again. That's what debug is equals to true means. All right. So right now, I believe that when I run this file in terminal, this should actually start our Flask app. So we have fulfilled the requirements currently to start our Flask app. All right. So to run a script in Python, we would use the command line Python, and then we would now state the file that we would like to run. So I told you that we'll start our Flask server using this main.py file. So I'll say Python main.py, and you can see we have a domain that actually leads now to our website. Now this will be empty because we of course do not have anything on this website at the moment. All right, so I'll follow the link, and you can see it's saying not found because we do not have any routes, no views, no HTML on our page yet. It's just an empty website at this moment. But yes, our Flask server is up and running. It has hit the ground running already. So great. And so the next thing we want to do is that we would like to, so I've saved it. Next thing we want to do is we now want to get into our views.py and auth.py. So I told you that these files would actually manage different routes on our website. Now let me give you a background to this. So in my init.py file, I actually started the app. I created the app. Now we can, from this app, create different routes. We can create routes for our authentication, create routes for our views, and let's say we have maybe 15 pages on our website, and all our routes will just be lumped up in one file basically. So it will be app.route and then the name of the route, and we can just have so many different routes linking to our app in one file. But for modularity's sake, to group files, that to actually group our routes in a file that has similar routes, so it's better for us to actually put our routes, like routes that are similar, we put them in a module that handles those specific routes. So what actually helps us in this modularity is something called blueprint. Blueprint helps us to group routes that are similar in certain files or modules. So auth.py now would have all the routes for authentication, while views.py will have all the routes that will be rendering our HTML basically, or other resources that clients will be requesting for on our web page basically. So I told you, I've given you a background why we need blueprint. We can do this on our main file. Well, it wouldn't be a best case scenario because all the files will just be lumped together in one file. But to create it in separate files for easy classification and for us to easily find it, so we put all this in different files. So that's why we have our auth.py, which handles the authentication, and views.py, which handles the views. And what we need to do is we need to create we need to get the blueprint, which helps in managing this modularity of routes. We need to get it from the Flask um, installation that we've made, because it's a class that is embedded in our Flask uh, application. So we get it, and then after getting it, we make use of it. We use it to register a particular module. So I would now say from Flask, I want to import blueprint. Blueprint. Good. Now I told you that this blueprint basically helps us to manage routes that are similar. It helps in creating modularity and actually classifies apps. Let's say authentication, we have login routes, sign up route, and also logout. And also now we now need to, so we have imported this blueprint, but we've not used it. So how do we use it? So we now say blueprint will take in two parameters, which is the first parameter will be what blueprint are we actually referring to, or what blueprints are we creating. I think that's a better use of language. So what blueprint are we creating? So this blueprint is for our auth, yeah, for auth module. And where is this being created? So I told you that this name is basically used to um, as a locational finder for the different classes and functions and variables that we create on our website. So this name is basically mapping this auth to the auth.py module. Now we'll now put this inside a variable container called auth. So now this blueprint is available to us within this auth variable. Great. So all I just need to do is, I really don't have to rewrite this in the views module. I just have to copy it and change the variable, since we are doing the same thing. So this auth will just become views. Good. Views. And so I've created this blueprint now. So this blueprint now will help me to create different routes within my views. And this blueprint will also help me create different routes for my authentication within this my authentication file. Without this blueprint, we cannot just call this auth and create routes. There will be no um, basically it just manages the creation of similar routes within a certain module. All right, so we are good. So last thing I want to do is this created blueprints that I have created. Now I would need to register them so that the init.py file knows of their existence. Good. So I'll go to my init.py file. And before I can register what is inside these files, I first need to be able to make the content of these files available within init.py, the init.py file. And basically, how do you do that? That means I have to import this module. I have to import them, the auth.py and the views.py. I have to import it into my init.py file, number one, so that I can have access to these blueprints within those modules or those files. So now I have to go to my init.py file, and I now say from, so I'm saying from this directory, because we're still in the same directory, the views, auth, and the init.py file, they are on the same directory. So we say from dot. So this dot simply means from this same directory that we are in, right? So from this same directory we are in auth. So I want to import. So what we're importing is the auth blueprint that we have created. And then the last thing we want to do is from dot views, which is the views.py. Want to import views. So we are importing the views blueprint from the views file that's in the same directory as init.py. That is the relationship between the files and what we are importing. So we are importing this views blueprint, which is inside our views.py, and we're importing this auth blueprint inside our auth.py, and we're making it accessible within the body of our init.py file. Good. And so the last thing we'll do is to now create the registration, right, inside our init.py file, which will be the last thing we'll be doing for this session. So we'll do app dot. Now register blueprint is an inbuilt function. It is not me that created it, so it is already there. So we'll do app dot register blueprint. You can see it's already there, and this will take in two arguments. And the first argument is the blueprint that we are registering. So the first blueprint we are registering is our auth, and the second variable we are registering is our views. So I'm just gonna change that to views. Views. All right, so we are good. So we've done our registration, but there's an optional parameter we can add, which is a URL prefix, which basically prefix, sorry, which basically creates a subdomain for our authorization or authentication blueprint and our views blueprint. You don't necessarily have to define it, but you can define it. So you can basically say our domain name stroke auth, now stroke the route that we are moving to. So let's say we create, for authentication we have a login route. So we can now say, so before we can access our login route, we do this http 127.0.0.1 and 5000. So that will be stroke auth. Now that is if we make our URL prefix auth, it will be stroke auth, now stroke login. That's if we define this URL prefix, but if we do not define it, it will just be this 127.0.0.1 stroke login directly when we define it in our auths file. So this URL prefix just basically adds a subdomain structure to our domain structure when it is defined. I told you don't have to define it. So basically we'll create it, but we'll leave it undefined because we really don't want to do the whole stroke auth or stroke views. We'll just leave it the way it is. We'll have it there, but we'll leave it undefined. So guys, we have come to the end of our first session in this series. Drop a feedback, drop a comment. All right, thank you. We'll continue from where we stopped. All right, so I'll be bringing this URL prefix. Yeah. So the code for this is available, and we'll also be dropping the link to the GitHub pretty under this video. All right, thank you for your time, and have a great time.